This is WPSL Port Saint Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It is 10:08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. And you're on Ask Your Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Cogregation, Eitz, Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And another beautiful Friday it is. The plants appreciating a little bit of rain shine coming in the past few days.
So how was it at your house? Oh, boy.
There was a little bit of rain. And
we had ducks floating through the patio.
I don't know that it was quite that much, but it definitely, the plants all said thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ours did
because they definitely needed it.
Oh, yeah, they did.
I've got a royal ponciana tree in the back that was beginning to look like it was thinking about not doing this year, but it now has leafed itself out. So
trying to say it was not feeling royal?
Yeah, it was not feeling real royal. I apparently did not supplement its water from what nature did not give it this year. Been a very dry year. My mangoes are minuscule this year compared to previous years. No water.
There you go. Yeah.
You need water to set fruit.
Yeah.
So on that note, one of the questions that I sometimes get, not so much here on the show because people haven't called in to 772-340-1590, and yet I hear people talking about the show, so I know people are listening.
Oh, yeah, you bet.
And people are coming up on Facebook already, too. So Eitz Chayim means tree of life, and that's an interesting piece out of the book of Genesis where God says, there's a tree of life in the garden. And that has so much more meaning in Judaism than most people realize. The tree of life is Torah. Torah is the first 5 books of Scripture. Yeah, we actually, in fact, if you looked at the Torah scroll right now that's in our ark, it has on it a banner that says Eitz Chayim Hi, it is a tree of life. And we sing a song to it that says, in Hebrew, but it says, it is a tree of life, and all that cling to it are made strong by it. And all of its pathways are peace.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right, so you come to the tree of life, not with hostility, not with anger, not with bigotry, but with peace.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's one of the overarching themes of Torah, of the first 5 books. Despite all of the battles and the wars and all of the rest that's in there, the overarching themes are love for God and God's love for us and how to make peace. And the problem is that we just don't pay enough attention.
You think?
Yeah, I definitely think. We could, I was at a service club meeting this past week, and one of the songs that they chose to say, they open and close the meetings with a song typically, and one of them was, let there be peace.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And let it begin with me. And I think that's a big piece that people often are not willing to make peace with themselves. And peace doesn't mean thinking that everything you're doing is right. Peace means recognizing the things you're not doing right and acknowledging that working on them is being on the path.
Sure.
And that's a big piece. We're not intended to be perfect. That's not what the design was. We are perfectly human, which means we all have things to learn, things to do, and we learn, unfortunately, best by making mistakes.
It is. I think of you every time I hear some of these conservative talk shows and they talk about race and stuff. And hearing you say, we're all one human race.
We are. I haven't found anybody yet who has something other than 23 chromosomes.
Yes.
or pairs of chromosomes.
Uh-huh.
Now, you might have anomalies and you might have missing or extras in there, but there's nobody that has 24 and nobody that has 22. Because that's not... So, yeah, we're all one. And, in fact, every sacred story, not just Judeo-Christian Muslim, which are the Abrahamic faiths, but all of them talk about a creator God in some fashion, and they talk about people coming from one source. Somebody, and I don't care whether you think it was a beached whale, a monkey that swung out of a tree, a bird that landed and shed its feathers. I don't care where you think humans came from, or that God went zap and there's humans. However that started, and we don't know because, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, and WPSL weren't there to report on it. So we really don't know, and it doesn't matter. But the point of all the stories is that we all started from one group. We all came on this planet somehow as humans. And that means we're all related. I don't know any of us that was not created by God.
So how do you explain the scientist's view of Big Bang is how we got here?
Big Bang is, and God said, let there be light. Boom.
Oh.
The beginning of the Big Bang.
There's some scientists listening to you going, huh?
Yeah. It's not incongruous. The only problem that we come to is the anachronism, and anachronism means putting something in the wrong time, of taking our definition today of a day and an hour, which hadn't yet been invented. I mean, the sun, moon, and stars are not there until the fourth day. Hello?
So it could have been millions of years.
Who's going to measure it?
What's a year?
It's a God unit of time. It's what God called a day.
Yeah.
It's not what we call a day. How dare we impose on God our understanding?
No, he's working for us.
Uh-huh. Yeah, right. And if you do this, God's on a puppet string. Talk about the height of idolatry to think that if and I particularly love the rabbit's foot one. People Google what it takes to be a lucky rabbit foot, and you might change your idea about that fuzzy piece of a rabbit attached to your keychain. It certainly is not lucky to the rabbit, and in some ways it's racist. Look it up. Find out what it takes.
I will, right after the show.
Find out what it takes to be a lucky rabbit's foot. It's got a whole lot of stuff wrapped up from a whole lot of superstition and just really questionable stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the things that people say and do just astound me. It really does. It's like, have you looked that up? Do you know where it comes from? Because all of these things that we say and do come from something. They come from age-old recognition. But the idea that God was limited to hours when hours had not yet been invented. The Bible does not talk about hours. It talks about watches of the day. And the day has 4 watches and the night has 4 watches. And if you think about that, that's give or take 3 hours-ish. It varies a little bit depending on latitude. Right, not longitude, but latitude. And it also has to do with the season. They're going to be a bit longer or shorter, but it's a unit of time for which a human being can pay attention to some extent. And I say that because all have a attention span, that's measured in seconds, not minutes. But the idea is that you keep bringing yourself back. And if you're wondering why I'm saying that, think about all the times you think about something. You can't be quiet to the count of 4 without a stray thought. coming into your mind because your mind doesn't shut down. We can
Mine does all the time.
One of the early forms of meditation that we teach people is to sit in silence and try to blank your mind, completely free it from thought, and count slowly to 10, kind of like the 1001, 1002, that kind of thing. So a second per count. And you have to start over again every time a stray thought enters your mind.
Oh, God.
And in 20 minutes, if you can reach the count of 4, you're probably lying.
Yeah, I would be.
Most people are. And that's just the way the brain is. It's constantly processing, thinking, observing. And that means that we're distracted every time one of those new thoughts bubbles up. And so the way that we pay attention is not by staying focused, but by bringing ourselves back to focus. And that's an important piece. So we are perfectly human. And, yes, Plato thought that there were better people and lesser people. And my guess is that he really was talking about people who have higher intellect and lower intellect. He was concerned with people who could govern their emotions and their appetites. And he considered those people as having logic in the driver's seat, as we would say today, which is, again, pulling some, Moses didn't drive a car across the Reed Sea. Not the Red Sea, folks. The Reed Sea. I don't know where that E went on the typeset floor, but it disappeared in the King James. It's the Reed Sea, Yam Suf. Very different in Hebrew. And I guess
Elon Musk drove a Tesla through there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and Back to Tomorrow, right?
Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And we look at things like that and we think that's how it went. And I'm going to guess that the kids entering college today probably have trouble understanding. How could they wander for 40 years? Just look it up on your cell phone. But, of course, you and I remember Google driving up and down the streets trying to get all of the maps coordinated.
Oh, yeah. They were driving up and down here several times. Yeah.
All the different places. So that's how they got that wonderful piece of video. And I know we used to, particularly in Tucson, because the motorhome in our back, where it is now, it stays, where there's a pad for it. But in Tucson, Bill would move it around what we called the back 40. We had a typical walled-in small area up close to the house, and then we had we lived on about between 8 and 9/10 of an acre.
Ooh,
it was a nice piece of land, and everything that was beyond the wall, we called the back 40.
Lots of cactus?
Oh, tons and tons of cactus.
I love it. Yeah.
But no saguaro in the back. There were 10 or 11 saguaro in the front. And Bill and I actually planted one saguaro in the backyard because he wanted to be able to see it from the bedroom window. He really liked the saguaro. And I've got 2 saguaro in my backyard here in Port Saint Lucie.
I still can't believe that they're growing here.
They're doing fine. They're in pots. I've got them up on a platform so I know they drain, which is the big thing they want. They didn't care that it didn't rain. They just sat there and looked at me and said, "Where's saguaro?" They're now, I don't know, somewhere between 2 and 3 feet high.
Okay. Wow.
They're babies.
I just would have thought the humidity here would just knock them down right
Humidity doesn't bother them. Wet feet bothers the heck out of them.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So they like orange trees, like drainage.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Orange trees won't grow in a swamp either. They need to be up on a higher piece of ground. So yeah, plants just need. It's surprising what things they can be tolerant of, and humidity, it doesn't really care. So yeah. Mm-hmm. So we are really quite interesting. We are one species. We are all human beings. Yes, we're different shades, but another proof that we're all one is if 2 different colors of people marry and have a child, the child will be somewhere in the spectrum. They won't come out exactly like either parent.
Right.
So that's right there a clue that yeah, there's a little teeny bit of those 23 chromosomes that's involved with the color of your skin, the color of your hair, the shape of your hair, the shape of your nose, your eye, whether or not it's easy for you to grow a beard or not. That's not a ton of information. There's much more information that's involved with whether or not your liver works, your heart works, etc. And so these are key things, and we are all much more alike than we think. Plato was wrong. We just have smarter people and not so smart people. We have emotional people and not so emotional people. And we have people who give in to every urge and people who have more discipline. That's just the human spectrum.
And I'm the latter. I have no discipline.
We're not even going to touch that. The key, right, and the key is whether or not you can look in the mirror and recognize that you're a work in progress and that you can be better tomorrow than you are today, that as long as you're breathing, you can still learn and get better. And that's the bottom line. As long as we're doing that, then we're vibrant. We're alive. We're human. We're doing what I think God put us on the planet to do, which is to grow and to learn. And when we do that, then we stop some of this petty greed. There doesn't have to be greed. I recognize that that's also a human trait. But the idea is, I think, that we're supposed to outgrow that by somewhere around 3 or 4 or 5. And I'm saying that as a psychologist. There's a development phase at which you start to become aware that there's a big wide world out there. And we might talk more about arrested development than anything else. Greed is just not actually, it's really not in anybody's best interest.
But there again, that goes all the way back to your Silk Road.
And now you
greedy individuals in a lot of cases, very ambitious types.
Yeah, people who want to make more than profit's not a dirty word.
Oh no, not at all. There's a big difference.
Everybody is entitled to get a profit off of their efforts, their business. It's when it becomes just off the charts unfair, when it's gouging. And that was the word I was trying to think of. And I can't always think of the word, but aphasia comes to mind. For those who don't know, aphasia is the scientific term for not remembering words.
I run into that a lot.
Yeah. I've lived with that my whole life, and it'll probably get worse someday when I'm 907, but right now I'm 903.
Oh.
But, yeah, there's nothing wrong with somebody making a reasonable wage. There's nothing wrong with somebody being rich. It's just when it's an unfair way of doing that, when it's oppressive to others, that becomes an issue. So we are all called, I think, to be our better selves. We're not always going to succeed. We're human. We're going to fall off that path to the tree of life from time to time. But the point of that is to recognize that you've fallen off and climb back on. And at least Jewishly, our tradition says you're never so far that you can't climb back up on the path. You're never so far. And that God, when God judges in the moment, not based on coulda, woulda, shouldas. But where are you right now when God looks? Where is your heart now? And so, of course, the challenge with that is that you never know when that moment's going to be. So plan like you're going to live forever, but act like you're at your last moments. Do what you can to improve yourself and improve life for others. And if we all did that, and I realize that that's kind of a Pollyanna, which is a corruption of one of the Hawaiian gods, by the way, that name. It's very close to one of the names. and that is the goddess who takes care of the poor and the farmers.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a piece in there, right? She's the one who makes sure that the farmers get the rain they need, that the snows melt at the right time to run down. So, yeah.
And snow in Hawaii is a reality.
It is.
Oh,
They grow coffee.
The Big Island.
The Big Island, yeah.
Yeah.
The Big Island definitely has snow. People think of Hawaii as being Oahu with
Wow.
beaches. And that's part of Hawaii.
That's just a stop for Carol and I. We just, the Honolulu airport, get the heck out of Dodge, go to Kauai.
I have to slightly disagree with you because the Polynesian Cultural Center
Oh, yes.
is on
No,
Oahu.
It's beautiful.
And that is beautiful, and that is just, it's a wonderful collection of Polynesian culture and heritage. It's well worth the time it takes to go there. Bill and I have very fond memories of seeing that. We went to the little aquarium also on the north side. They talk about the lee and the windward side. We went over to where that is, and I can remember somebody having a little penguin there that was amusing.
It's near one of the big hotels.
Well, there's hotels probably now everywhere.
Well, yeah.
I'm sure they have proliferated since the last time I was there.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. And what is really interesting is if you can talk to a true native Hawaiian and have them talk about the culture, it's incredible.
Oh, it is. It's a wonderful, wonderful culture.
And they were advanced.
They were extremely. Well, many cultures were advanced before the conquistadors came, and every once in a while I have a chance to talk with some colleagues about what usually is referred to as Christian repentance, and there is some needed in the world. Because in the effort to bring the good news to everybody, you sometimes obliterate other people's good news. And again, comes back. The sacred story, even of the Seminoles, has a creator.
Mm-hmm.
There's a creator somewhere who starts this road traveling. Now, admittedly, if you look at the Hindu tradition, where it is a period of expansion and contraction, which again lines up with your Big Bang, which couldn't have been a bang because there wasn't an ear around to hear it, so it's the big but something starts it off.
Yeah.
Right. That's the problem with the sound of the tree. Does it make sound waves? Yes. Is there a receptor to hear it? Maybe not. But I tend to think there probably is enough wildlife that hears it. It's not necessarily human ears. But if I look at my dogs, they hear a whole lot more than I do.
Yes, they do.
Oh, my gosh. Yes.
That's why fireworks bother them.
Oh, yeah. Fire. And they have different frequencies that bother them. I can remember one time when we had a skunk. Her name was Apple because she was striped. And if you look at the early logos of Apple computers, they were striped. The old logo with the apple with its bite out of it had multicolor stripes.
I'll have to look at that.
Go look that one up.
Yeah.
And so we had just gotten an Apple computer, and it had this big stripe logo on it.
You didn't get the one with the little box, did you? We had that.
Yeah, we had one of the early computers, and that's when we had the skunk. And so we named her Apple. And she was quite a character. But Bill he had these giant speakers in our house in Ohio. The big 6-foot subwoofer, the three, it was an accordion thing of three. It took up half the wall of the house. And every once in a while he would tune his system. He had a great big audio. He doesn't have that now, but he had a great big audio system. And he would tune it. And it was interesting to watch the skunk because she definitely heard some of the frequencies, particularly the lower ones. She really, really reacted to. Ones that he was using the meter because he couldn't hear.
And the dogs would hear the high ones.
I'm sure. They didn't really react. They kind of looked at us like, what? and
That's
every
interesting.
different animals hear
Vibration,
different.
maybe?
Probably, well, because they hunt and they listen to the sound of insects underground.
Mm-hmm.
We would walk her on a little harness. You have to walk skunks on a harness because their necks are thicker than their heads, and so if you just put a collar on, you are then chasing a skunk through the yard. So you put something that hooks around their body, and you have a prayer of holding on to them. But we would walk her because she really enjoyed walking outside. And every once in a while, she would stop and just burrow right into the ground at the spot, and she'd come back up munching something.
Wow.
Yeah, not necessarily when she did that in an anthill. It was not always fun, but
Oh, God.
it didn't bother her.
But it was a big meal for her.
Oh, she thought those were just wonderfully mobile little Tic Tacs.
Tastes like chicken.
Yeah, something like that. The other thing she adored were cherries. She had a real sweet tooth for cherry.
Really?
They can actually eat bees, and what they'll do if they get a hold of a bees, they roll it, and somehow that counteracts the venom so that they can actually eat it. And they also can be stung and not care, which tells you a lot about their nervous system. They just don't react to it. They can be stung many times, and so they will nibble in a hive or just about anything that they happen to uncover. But during cherry season back in those days, I would buy a case of cherries and I'd slide it into the bottom of the fridge. And during that season, the routine in our house was open the fridge, remove whatever you wanted, remove the skunk, and close the door. And the skunk would almost always come out with a cherry in her mouth that she had dug into.
Got it.
She went into and then she'd roll it on the floor, which of course put cherry juice on the floor. Which was what
Hopefully it's not white tile. Well, actually, that would be easy.
It was red tile. Yeah, you can see it very clearly. Yeah, it was red. It was red brick tile.
Uh-huh.
And one time she actually cured me of using those instant mashed potato flaky things.
Oh, gosh. Was that Ore-Ida or something?
Whoever it was, yeah.
Yeah.
And
my mom used
to
do
that. It was easy. It was popular at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a great big box of it in the pantry. And the skunk had stacked up things so that she could get up to the shelf. She got it down. She did this while we were sleeping one night because they're nocturnal, so they amuse themselves at night. And she apparently liked the sound of it, but she'd chewed off the edges of the box, and that entire kitchen dining area, we had a little dinette area, the hallway, everything on the main floor that was red brick tile, was covered in white mashed potato flakes. So, yeah, we spent the morning doing a little bit of house cleaning before we went to work. She was quite a character. She would typically climb into bed somewhere around 3 or 4 a.m. Just before the sun came up, she'd climb into bed and
How
nestle.
long did she live?
She lived, I want to say, about 6 years. 6-7 years. That's a little bit short. She had a condition that's not uncommon among pet-bred skunks, which is a kind of liver toxicosis, where they don't metabolize certain minerals that collect in their livers. It's an imbalance partially because the diet, of course, that they eat in the house is different than if she just lived on those grubs and ants and wild cherries that she found outside.
Yeah, I was going to have to question you that
Yeah.
your skunk had cirrhosis of the liver.
It wasn't cirrhosis, but she did get a little potted one night. But Bill and I were sharing a daiquiri, which is, of course, sweet.
Sure.
And I don't remember why, but Bill put it down on the floor. We were sitting on the sofa, and he put it down on the floor. And she toddled over and stuck her nose in it and downed it before we could. Whenever she decided to do something like that, eat something, drink something, it was gone. She was very, very fast. And she drank that entire thing, and we looked at her and went, huh.
Uh-oh.
Given that, and it was only like maybe a quarter of an inch in the bottom of the glass. There wasn't a lot there. But, skunk's not big. But it was sweet. It was fruity. And so she drank it all.
Did she pass out?
No, but she toddled around a little strange for a while. we actually made sure she did stay awake because we did not know how much alcohol she had actually gotten from that little bit. And she definitely was a drunk skunk, but she was funny.
My.
There are ways that I miss her. She's an interesting. They make a good pet. They're litter box trained, and as I said, if you put a harness on them, you can actually walk them outside. They move fast enough that you can walk with them.
So tell us about your class.
About my class?
With a nun
and
a rabbi.
That was what we call clinical pastoral education. It's what you need to be certified to be a chaplain in a hospital or in a hospice unit or something of that type. Mm-hmm. And the way that they're run is that a supervisor will have a class of them, and you practice being a chaplain in the hospital so that you not push any agenda on a patient, that you allow the patient you have to serve whatever the patient is. So I would serve Catholic patients. Obviously, I would serve some Jewish patients, but I'd also serve Protestants, Hindus, pagans. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what you were. Whatever your spiritual needs were, it was my job to do what I could to see that those needs were met while you were in the hospital. Mm-hmm. And there were some wonderful, wonderful times. And so I couldn't obviously give last rites or communion or any of those things, but we did have a priest on call who would come and do those things. Also a couple of the Protestant ministers, depending on the flavor of the patient. But everything else I would do, I can remember getting a call from somebody saying, the doctor was telling her to come in. It was that time for her mother. Could I meet her in the room and bring some focal devices? And you, as a Catholic, you of course know what I'm talking about. And my answer to her was, would you prefer the Virgin, or who would you prefer? Mm-hmm. Right. And for those who don't know what a focal device is something to focus on so that you can direct your prayers to God. And it's focus. It's not that you're worshiping the picture or the figurine. It's that it's there to help you recognize what you're doing. And I think that very often, even in scriptures, people got it wrong, that sometimes people need focal devices. The Hindu statues are not gods. They're focal devices, folks. Mm-hmm. Hinduism believes in incarnations of God. Gee, what other religions might have incarnations of God? And depending on what your particular flavor of Hinduism is, you'll have a different parivar, a different group of representatives that you'll use to represent different things, or you might be a smartism and have multiple. So they'll cross lines, and there's varieties and flavors in between, just as there are with Christianities. And it was an interesting piece just this week. Somebody was saying to me that she was Christian and she was having a problem with her mom because her mom joined one of the lesser-known Christian groups. And my mind is going, she's still Christian. But, of course, it's a different flavor, and so some of the biggest disputes are among things that are closest.
Okay, so you're a chaplain.
Yeah.
How in the world do you handle an atheist?
Okay, couple of things. Atheism is a belief in non-God. Excuse me. And the challenge that I find with atheists, and I'll get back to the nun and the rabbi.
Okay, yeah.
I did not forget it. But an atheist very often has a definition of God that I wouldn't agree with either. It's more a function of definition than anything else. So there's a family that I worked with a couple of years ago who will go up one side and down the other and tell you they are atheists and they've been atheists for generations, but she believes in God and she believes in love and spirituality. And so what I said to her was, you've got a God. Its name is love. And so God is the source of love. God is the source of life. And I try to explain it this way, that God is that which causes us to breathe. It's that spark, that energy, that thing that separates the living from the not living. Whatever that is, that's the divine margin. After that, what God is or how God acts, that's a function of your experience and your definition. But if we can just agree that something causes that, whether it's sentient or not, something causes that. And that's the life force. So you can pray to God as the source of life. We call God the eternal. Very often when I translate a prayer or a blessing, I'll say source of blessing. You are a source of blessing who helps us see the fruit of the season, or something like that. It's just an acknowledgement that we live on this amazing, amazing planet. And if we would only stop long enough to look around and see the miracles of life all around us, not one of us has never had a good thing happen. In fact, good things happen every day. And so my prayer is always that you notice the good things that happen to you every day.
And how do you handle an agnostic?
Agnostic's a little bit harder in some ways because agnosis, right, no knowledge. So an agnostic says that concept of God is so, I guess it actually is pretty much the same way as I think about it. But an agnostic says God is so immense, so out there, you can't prove, you can't disprove. I'm going to wait until I have a little more information and then make a decision. So they're in a pre-decision mode. And I often called myself an agnostic many years ago. Mind you, at the time I'm still talking to something, which I later recognized was probably God. Certainly not just me, but whether we call it universe or whatever, those are just labels. And what we're doing when we do that is we're minimizing God, or we're looking at one side of God. And it's very hard to talk about something that's infinite and beyond comprehension. Maimonides said the only thing we can know about God is how futile it is to try to know God. And the idea is not to know God, but to experience God. To feel that presence in your life. You know when you're connected and the stream is healthy and productive. You know when you're on a negative path, too, and you're getting a charge out of that. That's not healthy hormones. The healthy hormones are the endorphins, the things that are real rewards, not just the chemical, quick dopamine drop. So it takes an amount of growth to get beyond this is just a quick high, to this is really doing something that's going to move me and the world to a higher place. That's a different set of hormones, and they feel different. But you've got to get to the place of recognizing it and experiencing it. Children, I think, get a natural dose of it to some extent, but if they're the victims of trauma, they forget what that feels like. Somehow trauma rewires the brain. We know that it rewires the brain. And part of what it does is it messes with the hormonal receptors so that the wrong things start creating reward feelings. And unfortunately, that reinforces what the abuser can do to the victim. Abusers just instinctively know how to play with that. And that takes rehabilitation and working with people. Those are brains that need some relief, if you will, from that kind of short circuit. And that's a difficult thing. I say that with what does it take No, I'm not advocating locking up everybody you think is crazy and making them conform to your image. That's not the idea. The idea is to find out what in life is constructive and how do we help the greatest number of people strive for what's good. It's not an easy question to answer. And everybody, as Kant said, everybody's entitled to be treated with autonomy, with dignity. That includes prisoners, convicted felons. That includes the guy down the street who's obnoxious. That includes you.
And, you've talked on how the big difference of treating prisoners in the USA versus Germany.
Oh, yeah, huge. Huge, huge, huge. I'm teaching a class in forensic psychology this term. We're in fact...
Summer term, yeah.
Yeah, summer term, summer A, which is the first month at Kaiser. And we took a look at the Ken and Barbie. It's a very famous couple in Canada that was serial killer. And he is still serving multiple life sentences. And she, the wife, has served her time and is now out. And one of the questions that I asked the class is, how would their treatment and or imprisonment been different in Germany? Is this somebody that the German system could rehabilitate? And they don't always succeed. But they have very few that are detained in prison and will never get out.
And their recidivism rate is very low.
Their recidivism rate is incredibly low. If we look at the big difference, big difference, aside from the everyday treatment, which is just miles away, the training of the prison staff in Germany takes 2 years, during which they get trained to be a counselor as well as a guard. So they spend a little bit of time learning control techniques and all of that, not just the few months that we give our prison staff here, but they get trained, how do you deal with people? How do you de-escalate? How do you this? How do you that? And it's a very different system. They accept 1 in 10 of the applicants who apply for a job.
Wow.
And it's a very coveted job to be a prison staff. And the prison warden is usually a holder of a psychological or a psychiatric degree. So they take it very, very seriously. And they look at it as, how do we help this person become a productive part of society? And so what do? They require them to take training. They've got to learn a trade while they're in prison. They cook for themselves. The last 6 months of their prison terms, they're in what's called an open prison, where they come in at night, but during the day, they're encouraged to find a job and go to work during the day, and they're encouraged to find and make a deposit on a place where they're going to live when they get out. So when the door is open and their term is over, they have a job, they have a place to live, they have a skill. They are ready to go into society.
Mm-hmm.
And the German version of privacy prevents people from knowing what crime they've committed. Kind of like a HIPAA thing. So, they've done their time. Yeah. They are no longer a criminal. They are re-released into society. That's so different from, here, come spend your time, much of it in solitary, certainly much of it locked up in a cell where you're not learning, you're not doing anything. The amount of education that goes on in American prisons outside of how to be a master criminal is minimal at best. And they just don't have the ability to learn the things that people need to learn. They don't get the skills. And what do? We open the door and say, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got nothing. They've got no job. They've got a record that anybody can look up, and they have to report it, and blah, blah, blah. It's setting somebody up where they don't have many opportunities for success. So what are they going to do? They're probably going to do something to get back in, because that's what it is. So, yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what your class comes up with.
So that's one of the things that they were asked to do, as opposed to the Canadian prisons, which are still a whole lot better than American prisons. But how different would that be? Now, the Germans do recognize that hardened criminals, for example, they've got a youth prison for offenders who break the law under the age of 18, but they serve their entire sentence in that juvenile facility. Right. So in America, when a juvenile hits 18, they go into the big pen with the hardened criminals. In Germany, they stay in the youth facility. So the average age in the youth facility is in the young 20s, because they're serving out the rest of their sentence. But again, they're going to do training. They're going to be encouraged to get a job and go back into society. They're not going to put them in with the folks who have long-term prison sentences. So they've got multiple kinds of prisons. They've got prisons for those with long sentences. They've got those for 5 years and less. They've got this open prison for the last 6 months, and they've got youth prisons. And that's how they classify them. Their prisons are much smaller than ours. Their population is typically measured in the hundreds, not thousands. We've got prisons here in America that have thousands of inmates.
Oh, yeah.
Thousands of inmates.
I've been in a bunch. Yeah, and
it's warehousing people.
Yeah. Oh, when I was in Folsom, doing this.
Yeah, Folsom, I think, has 3,500.
Oh, at least 3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were doing a rating series, most dangerous prisons in California, and boy, there's some scary folks.
There are some scary.
But there are some scary guards.
There are some very scary guards.
And I see exactly what you're saying. And if folks want to learn something about the German system, go back, check 60 Minutes on YouTube.
Yeah.
And look at that segment on the German prisons.
Yeah.
It runs two segments of television time.
Or look up German Prisons Rosen TED Talk.
Okay.
He's one of the people. He was the DA somewhere in California when he went on the trip, and he tells the story. And he also explains how and why Germany came to the current prison system. So does the 60 Minutes, actually. This is based on their constitution that they came up with at the end after World War II. And the first article of their constitution is that human autonomy is inviolable. You cannot violate human autonomy. And because of that, it's one prisoner, one cell, and the prisoners have the keys.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And, they have a mindset, and this is obvious in the 60 Minutes piece, they are not looking to escape.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no.
That is not. They want to serve their time, get it done, and get back out into society. That's a cultural mindset that they have created, and it is, quite frankly, what we need to work on. How do we create that mindset that says, okay, I was convicted of something, let me get the time done and move on.
And I love the fact that they give the folks time to look for work.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
And when a prisoner behaves, they get furloughs, what we would call furloughs. They get weekends off and things like that they can visit with family, because the isolation from family is what prison is, from family and friends. And Rosen asked this prison folks, what percentage of people either commit a crime while they're out for the weekend or don't come back, and they were real quick to say it's 0.3%.
Wow.
Out of the thousands of people that get furloughs, 0.3%.
Wow. Amazing.
That's 3 out of a whole bunch of people. So not a problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It is. And that's just, it's the system they don't want to violate. They, they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. They know it's not a train. And so they're going there. So real quickly back to the nun and the rabbi.
Yes.
There was this one class that both I and a nun needed one more CPE unit. And the supervisor had made a deal with us where we could join this one class that was in progress. We had to do extra work to make up the hours that they had already done, which he did with us. He had special meetings, and we did extra work. But, yeah, the standard joke was, hey, did you hear about the nun and the rabbi? Shh, they're coming. So that was kind of fun. And I enjoyed those months of my life, that year or two of my life. It was great fun. That was Akron General Hospital. And Lynn Barnett, shout out to him, changed my life, changed me. The whole experience did. And to everybody else that was there. I still actually Facebook talk with two of the people from there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, we found each other on Facebook after Facebook came up. There I go again, showing the dinosaurs in my backyard.
Well, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, hey.
Many years ago.
Yeah.
Back in the days of pagers and things.
What?
Yeah, pagers.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I remember being tied to those things in TV news.
Cell phones are relatively new, folks.
They are. Oh, yeah.
I know, because I had one of the first ones. We used to call it the brick. It was a bag phone.
I was carrying a brick in the San Francisco earthquake.
Aha.
Yep. Know it well.
They were handy. We were glad to have them. As heavy as they were. They were a brick, though.
They were.
Oh, gosh. I think I don't know if we have it or not. Who knows what Bill has stored away in his memorabilia. He's got a little area of the house that's memorabilia, and he kind of stores some of those memories.
You could probably make $1 million off that.
Who knows? He's got a train set back there. So anyway, this is our Shabbat dinner. Shabbat. And in the future, if you'd like to join us, that's third Friday. Services are at 7:30. Please check out the website, www.eitschayim.org, eitzchayim.org. And this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb for Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast.
Have a good week.
You too.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port Saint Lucie. Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world on your TuneIn app.